The final lesson before we jump into reading 1 John chapter 2 is wrapping structures. Here I've called them that structures. And that's because if you have a sentence like, he said that, the word that can be used to sort of wrap up any content you want. It could be a single sentence, he said that he was hungry. Or it could be a long discourse. He said that once upon a time he had gone, and so on and so forth. The point being that the word that signals to you that everything that follows interacts with its context, the larger clause, he said, as a nominal. And that's what a wrapper does. It signals how a given unit interacts with its context. Now when you see a unit in the text, like a nominal phrase or a clause or something like that, you should be asking, how does this unit behave in its context? The way you know how it functions is based on what type of unit it is. Is it a nominal? Then it functions in its context as a nominal. Is it a verbal? Then it functions in its context as a verbal, as a clause essentially. Or is it a unit that is wrapped up? If it's wrapped, then it's not the unit on the inside, so to speak, that tells you how it functions. It is the wrapper that tells you how that unit functions. And now that we're talking about wrapping, we can look at a new kind of word type. We've seen nominals and we've seen verbals. We've also seen two special types of verbals, which are participles and infinitives. But now we're going to talk about particles. Luckily, particles are the easiest to learn. And that is because particles are not nominals, so they don't have case, they don't have gender, they don't have number. They're not verbals, so they don't have person or any of the other verbal properties. They are non-inflecting words. That means they are words that do not change. The only changes that you'll see with particles are phonological ones. Do you remember how we looked at consonant changes? For example, a word like ek could, in certain contexts, become x if it's followed by a sigma. Well, that's the only kind of change that particles ever undergo. They don't have any properties, and so they don't change based on properties. Now note that not all wrappers are particles. Some wrappers are nominals, like the article, but many wrappers are particles, and particles do not change based on context. Some wrappers will, but you've already seen most of those. We've already seen some of the very common wrappers. You've seen kai, which means and. You've seen en, which means in. You've seen the article, the, that's a wrapper. And we've seen the word hati. Hati means that. That's where I come up with the designation that structure. Well, this is one of those particles. It creates that structures. Now, there's different kinds of wrappers. There's different kinds of wrappings, you could say. For instance, a wrapper can signal that everything wrapped up here interacts with its context as a nominal. We've seen this in a previous example. Here we have the one who claims in the light to be. The article wraps up everything that comes after it here. And it tells you that this entire string of words interacts with its context as a nominal. This might be the central participant in a clause. The one who claims to be in the light is something. The one who claims to be in the light does something. So that would be a nominal wrapper. How about particles? How do particles interact with their contexts? The way particles interact with their context is as a circumstance. This is kind of like a dative nominal. The dative case signals to you that the relationship between this nominal and its context is as a circumstance of sorts, in some kind of relation. Here are some examples of particles. The word may means not. Now, how does the word not function in a clause? Well, it's not a participant. You wouldn't say, the not went to the store, or something like that. Although if you put the word the in front of it, it all of a sudden wraps it up as a nominal, and so that's why it can make sense. But you don't normally speak that way. The word ook also means not. The word not interacts as a circumstance in its context. So if you have a clause like, he did throw the ball, and you add the word not, you simply add a new circumstance of negation. He did not throw the ball. He did not go to the store. And finally, the word alethos means truly. Truly is a slightly more complicated circumstance. It's not merely a change in the polarity from positive to negative, but it's a simple circumstance nonetheless. While a wrapper, too, can signal that everything wrapped up here interacts with its context as a particle, as a circumstance. So in this example, we've got the one who claims to be in the light. The word en here wraps up the dative phrase, the light. So you have in the light. The way the light interacts with its context is as a circumstance. It is a circumstance of being in the light. It's not a participant. The light is not the one that's being. It's not something happening to the light. It's just a circumstance of the clause. Now, there's a nominal wrapper and there's a particle wrapper, but there's no wrapper that says this unit behaves like a verbal. And that's because the verbal is the top level unit in the syntax. The next highest unit is a discourse kind of unit, and it isn't structured in the same way as syntactic units are. If you want a verbal to function as a nominal, you have to wrap it up in a nominal. That's why you have the participle. If you want a verbal to function as a circumstance, you have to wrap it up in a particle, something that commonly happens to infinitives. So when we're talking about wrappers, we have nominal wrappers. For example, you have the article, the thing, the one who claims, or something like that. You have the relative pronoun, who. You have the word hoti, which means that. He said that. Now everything that follows that, everything that's wrapped by it, functions as a nominal. And then we also have particle wrappers. For example, en or ek, in or from. Normally these are called prepositions. They're put in front of whatever their wrapped unit is. So if they wrap a nominal phrase, they are prepositioned to the nominal. I prefer to think of it as a wrapper because it's really doing something very similar to the article or any of the other wrappers. And so that's how I'm going to talk about it.